So yesterday we implemented class and objects in Python. Now we'll go with inheritance and how this inheritance is going to be implemented in Python. Inheritance in Python. So first of all, what do you mean by inheritance? So inheritance is nothing but inheritance. It is the process of deriving. It's the process of deriving a new class from an existing class. Okay, so just we are going to derive a new class from an existing class, or we are going to derive a subclass from a superclass, or we are going to derive a child class from a parent class. So this is the concept of inheritance. Let me give some example so that you can understand. So here I have some class and I have some other class here. So here if I consider this, this is a base class. This is a base class and this is a derived class. This is known as inheritance. Okay, so here if you observe here, this is derived from the base class. Okay, so this is nothing but inheritance. I am going to derive a new class. New class means derived. And what is the existing class? Existing class is nothing but a base class. So simple example, for example, parent. Parent is the base class and child is the derived class. Or a grandparent is the base class and parent is the derived class. So like that we'll have, we can take any example and we'll try to interpret in the concept of inheritance. But what is the main use of inheritance? Why we need to use inheritance? So the main use of inheritance is, or the advantage of inheritance is, reusability of code. What do you mean by reusability of code? I'll tell you. So reusability of code means, for example, if you see here, I have some code in this base class. I written some code in base class, and I need to derive a class from the base class. So here, as I have some code in base class, I don't need to write the same base class code again in the derived class. For example, let me give some simple example. In base class, I have some variables x and y. Okay, so in derived class, actually I need x and y. So as derived class, if you see this arrow will indicates I'm deriving this class derived from the base class. So I don't need to redefine. I don't need to redefine x comma y here. Why I don't need to redefine x comma y here? Because it is inherited from base. Okay, so here x comma y is already there in the base class, and if you see here, this derived class is inherited or derived from the base class. So that's why I don't need to redefine this xy again in the derived class. I'll give a simple example for this. For example, you are derived from your parent, or you are inherited from your parent. So for example, let's say your father is having some property. So automatically you are going to get that property. Why you are going to get? You don't need to buy from your father. You don't need to buy that property from your father, because you are derived from your father, automatically you will get the property, right? So that is the main use of inheritance. You don't need to redefine, just simply you can reuse it. It's a reusability. I don't need to, for example, this base class is having some 1000 lines of code. Okay, so in derived class, I can use the entire code what I have in base class in the derived class. For that, I don't need to write again the code from scratch. So that is what the main use of inheritance. So the advantage of inheritance is nothing but a reusability. Reusability. Reusability means I can write once and I can reuse the same anywhere. So I can write in the base class, I can reuse it in my derived class. I can write in the parent class, I can reuse it in my child class. I can write in the super class and I can reuse it in subclass. Okay, so this is the main use of inheritance. So now we'll see what are the types of inheritances. Types of inheritance. So we have different types of inheritance. One is nothing but single inheritance. Single inheritance. So the single inheritance is nothing but we have only one base class and only one derived class. So that is nothing but single inheritance. Single inheritance is nothing but we have only one base class and one derived class. One derived class. Okay, we have only one base class and one derived class. So the example what I showed here. So this is nothing but a example for simple or single inheritance. So simple or single inheritance are nothing but it is the inheritance which is having only one base class and one derived class. So this is actually comes under single inheritance, or we can call it as single or simple. Both are same. So it is single inheritance. Single inheritance. Inheritance. So this is nothing but single inheritance. Why it is known as single inheritance? Because it is having only one base class and one derived class. Okay, so it is having only one base class and one derived class. So now we'll see how this is going to be implemented in Python. The theoretical aspect I explained. What do you mean by inheritance, and what is the main use of inheritance, and what are the different types? We'll see with the programming examples. So already yesterday we seen, if you want to understand this program, single inheritance, first you should know, okay, what do you mean by class? That is the reason why yesterday I told you, okay, with the different programming examples, we discussed class. Okay, what a class consists of, what is member, what is method. Okay, we seen different types of examples in yesterday's class. I given 3 examples. One is student example, one is employee example, okay, and one more example we talked about some book example. Okay, so now we'll see one by one this implementation part, how this is going to be implemented in Python, right? So now I'll go to this IDLE and I'll open this IDLE and I'll implement this. I can take some simple example. Okay. So I hope all of you are remembered the syntax of a class. And yesterday I showed you some other program. In that program, I took multiple classes. Okay. In single program, we seen a student class and an employee class. And of course, I took that example and I created 2 different objects also for student class I created a S object, and for employee class I created E object. So now we'll see how this is going to be implemented. Single inheritance. Okay. So I can take some class here. Class. I can take some student, and in the student I can take some method. Okay, I can take some method. Method is nothing but simply define M1. M1 is nothing but a method name. Okay, M1 is nothing but a method name. So self is the parameter. Already I told you when we discussed about the concept of class. Self is the default parameter that is going to be there in any class. Okay, now I can write print. This is parent class method. This is parent class method. Okay, next I can create a child class method. Child class I can create. Okay, so in child class I can create a class student 2. So I can call this as student 1. Student 1 means base class, and student 2 means child class. So here I can write some method here. So define M2. M2 is nothing but method 2, and I can write self is the argument, and here I can print this is child class method. This is child class method. Okay, so now this is the end of your 2 classes. Okay, so this is the first class, or I can call it as parent class. This parent class. So parent class is here to here. All of you please observe. Parent class is here to here. So what is the parent class? Parent class name I given as student 1. You can give any name. And in this parent class student 1, I took some method. Okay, I took some method name. I can call it as M1. You can take any other method name also, it doesn't matter. Okay, and I created one more class, child class. Child class is nothing but the student 2. Okay, so in student 2, actually if you see here, these 2 are 2 different classes. Student 1 is different and student 2 are different. But what is our concept? Our concept is student 2 should be derived from student 1. Student 2 should be derived from student 1. So that is the reason why I need to use the inheritance concept. So inheritance is nothing but student 2 should be derived from student 1. So here I can write student 1. In student 1. So this is nothing but what we can call it as inheritance. So student 2 is inherited from student 1. Student 1 is inherited from student 1. Student 2 is inherited from student 1. So what is the syntax? What is the syntax of inheritance? Syntax is very simple. Just you write the brackets. So in brackets, whatever the class you need to write, from that class, this class is inherited. So in our example, I written in the brackets student 1. So what is the meaning of this writing the student 1 in brackets? So student 2 is derived from student 1. That is the meaning. Okay. Student 1 is the base class and student 2 is the derived class. So if I written like this, then what do you mean by this statement? The statement is nothing but I am going to derive a new class student 2 from the old class student 1. So what will happen if I written like this? What will happen? Simply I implemented the single inheritance. So student 2 is the derived class and student 1 is the base class. So as I written here, if you are going to use inheritance of deriving a new class from an existing class. Here existing class is student 1, new class is student 2. Existing class is student 1 and new class is student 2. And it is an example of single inheritance. Why? We have only one base class and only one derived class. Right. So now, okay, so this is over. Now I am going to write the main program. Yesterday already I told you in our examples, when I created student example, employee class example, I told you if you are going to define something, if you are going to define some class, nothing is going to happen. But you need to create an object. For example, you may have some doubt. What will happen if I run this program? If I run this program, what will happen? Nothing will happen. Why? Because I'm not going to create any object. So far, I didn't created any object. I can call it as inheritance1.py. Inheritance1.py. So now, if I run this program, all of you please see here. If I run this program, what will happen? It is not going to give any output. You can see here, it's not giving any output. What is the reason? The reason is just we defined some class. That's it. Okay. We didn't return anything in that. Means we didn't call that class. How can I call that class? If I want to call that class, I need to create an object. So that's why I'm keep on saying we need to have object. That object is going to be created, okay, in the main part. So that's why I am calling this as a main. Okay, so in the main, what I'll do, I'll simply create an object. Actually, I'll create an object. So how can I create an object for a class in Python? Already we seen in yesterday's class. Okay, so I can create an object. So S is nothing but object. I can create object for this class, student2. Okay, so what is student2 actually? Student2 is a derived class. Student1 is a base class. Student2 is derived from student1. So that is the reason why I am creating an object for the derived class. I am not creating any object for the base class. Why I am not creating any object for the base class? Because here I am using the concept of inheritance. For example, if I am not using the concept of inheritance, I am supposed to create object for both. Yesterday, that is what we did in that example. In multi-class example, I created two classes, employee and as well as student class. For employee class, I created one object, and for student class, I created one more object. Why? Because these two are independent classes. Student is different and employee is different. If I want to access the information from student, I need to create object for the student class. And similarly, if I want to access the information from employee class, I need to create an object for the employee class. So that is the reason why we created two objects for the two classes. But here, what about this example? In this example, they are not independent. The student1 and student2 classes are not independent. They are dependent. If you see this diagram, you can understand whether they are independent or dependent. They are dependent. Dependent means student2 is depending on student1, or student2 is derived from student1. So if one thing is depending on other, or if one thing is derived from other, that is nothing but we can say that the relationship is dependency. For example, parent child are nothing but they are dependent. Child is depending on the parent, right? So like that, here also these two classes are dependent. So once I created an object for the derived class, then I know I don't need to create any object for the base class, because the object for the derived class itself will give you the right to access the information from both the classes. Okay, don't need to create any separate object for the base class. So I created object for this derived class student2, and with this object, s object s dot m1, s dot m1, and s dot m2. So you have some doubt. Okay, what is the doubt? How can we access m1? Actually, this m1 is there in which class? M1 method is there in student1 class. But am I created any object for student1 class? I didn't created any object, right? I created object for student2 class. But with this object only, I am trying to access a method which is there in student1 class. Is it valid or invalid? In general, it is invalid. But here we are using inheritance. That is the reason why it is valid. Okay. So why it is valid? It is valid because student 2 is derived from student 1. So that's why I can access the information from the student 1 and from the student 2 by using the object of student 2 only. So this is the main use of inheritance. Without creating any object for the base class, you can access the information of the base class. As I given one example, your father is having some property, right? So by default, you can get the access. You don't need to take any separate permission. By default, as you are the child, directly you will get the access. Same concept in inheritance also. In inheritance also, we are going to have the same concept. Okay. So this is the main use. That is what I mentioned as reusability. Reusability is nothing but don't need to redefine again. Don't need to use anything. Okay. I don't know why you are keep on raising your hands. Abdul Mujib or something. Okay, if you have any query, you can type in the chat box. The last 5 minutes, I'll give you the permission. You can type in the chat box. Okay, why keep on raising your hand? Don't disturb others. If you are not interested, sit quiet and please note down the things. Don't disturb others. Okay, so now in general, for example, if I remove this inheritance concept, this program is going to give me the error. If I remove this inheritance concept, this program is going to give me the error. The reason is these two are become independent if I remove inheritance. Very simple. Okay. So that is what actually yesterday we seen. Now I'll run this program and we'll see how it's going to access the base class information. Okay. So now see here, what is the output we got? This is parent class method and this is child class method. So now see the program and output side by side so that you can understand. Okay. So this is the output of your program. Output is nothing but this is parent class method, this is child class method. So here parent class method we defined in student 1 class, and child class method we defined in student 2 class. Okay, so that's why with this example you can understand, you can access any information. You can access any information of the parent class with the help of your child class object. If it is going to use the concept of inheritance. If it is not going to use, for example, same program I'll write, same program I'll copy and I'll write without inheritance. Same program, just you try to identify the differences. So here nothing but without inheritance. This same program I can write without inheritance, so that you can understand what is happening if you are using inheritance. And if you are not using inheritance, okay. So now I am going to remove this because I am not using inheritance here. Okay. So now if I am not using inheritance, so what will happen? So student 2, and here I created object for student 2, and I'm calling M1 and M2 method. So now let's see what will happen. So here I'm trying to access the information of without inheritance. I can save it as without inheritance dot py. Now I'll run this program. We'll get an error. Okay, now see here. We are getting an error. All of you please read this error. What is this error? Attribute error. Student to object has no attribute M1. Did you mean M2? Please all of you read this point. Attribute error. Student to object has no attribute M1. Did you mean M2? So what is the meaning of this line? So this line meaning is in student to object, whatever we created student to object, let me show you that program also. Yes. So this is the program. So in what is the error? Error also I'll keep here so that you can get more clarity on what it is telling. Okay. It's telling us student to object has no attribute M1. So student 2 is not having M1 or M1. So student 2 is having only M2. But how can you access M1 with student 2 object? So that is what the error is all about. Yes, that is true. Because student 2 is having only M2 method. Student 1 is having M1. But I didn't create an object for student 1. Without creating object for student 1, I am trying to access student 1 method. It is invalid. Why? Because student 2 and student 1 classes are independent. They don't have any dependency. They are different classes. So you can't access the information of one class with the help of other object. So here I am doing the same. I am trying to access the information of student 1 with the help of student 2 object. It is invalid. So that is the reason why we are getting this error. Why we are getting this error in this example? Because I'm not using any inheritance concept. For example, if I use inheritance concept, then we won't get this error. So that is the main difference. Now you can compare these two programs. You can understand what is the difference between this program and this program. Just I'm keeping side by side these programs. So now we can understand what is the difference. So this is right side program is with inheritance. Left side program is without inheritance. Now we can see looking like same code, but there is little bit difference. Where the difference? The difference comes here. So this line, the difference is there. So here, this is what inheritance is all about. So here I written class student 2 in brackets student 1. Class student 2 in brackets student 1. But left side, if you observe the same line, I didn't return anything in the brackets. So what is the meaning of that? If I didn't return anything in the brackets, so student 2 is nothing but not derived. It is independent. But if you see right side, we can have in the brackets I written student 1. So that is the meaning of inheritance. So that is the reason why in second program, in without inheritance program, we got an error. But in first program, in inheritance program, we won't get any error. Okay. So that is the main use of inheritance. We can access any information of its parent class with the help of child class object. But if you are not using inheritance, if you are trying to access the information of a parent class with its child class, okay, it's going to give you an error. It is not invalid. Simple example. You are if somebody is trying to access your mobile, or somebody is trying to access your laptop, okay, it is invalid. It's not possible. Actually, it is illegal. We can say it's not legal. It is illegal because the data whatever you have is, okay, maybe accessed by, it is possible only for your family members, or maybe if you want to share, maybe you can share with your friends also. Okay, but unauthorized users are not permitted to access your information. So same thing here also. If there is any relation, if there is any dependency relation, then only they are supposed to access. That's why if you are going to fill any applications, or if you are trying to fill any uh, insurance forms, they will ask nominee. Okay, nominee is nothing but the people who are depending on you, or the information or the data you are supposed to give the people uh, who are you are supposed to share the information with the people. For example, like maybe your father or your mother, or maybe if you are married, maybe you can give your okay, wife details, like that. So here also, because they are the people only related with you, and you are not supposed to give some other names. So that's why they can access, they can get the details. So here also, that is the meaning of inheritance. So I hope it is